Hi, I'm Glenn Hughes.
And I'm Ed Buzio.
For 3 decades, I've been working inside a publicly traded company.
And for over a decade, I've been an entrepreneur supporting companies like Glenn's from the outside.
In this series, we look at the problems and challenges of the modern workplace
and provide our ideas and advice
from the inside
and out.
We all work, and we all hopefully have a life. So how do we balance work and life? Ed?
Well, for starters, I want to ask the question, why does work have to not be part of life? Do you have to stand with your feet in manure all day and suffer, and then draw a line at the end of it and call everything after life? Or can you have some life in work and some work in life? I wrote a book called 4 Secrets to Liking Your Work, which were some models about how to make sure your work and your, for want of a better term, personality align so that you can get some real satisfaction in your work. Doesn't mean you work 24/7, but at least you should get some enjoyment out of it. I think that's a big part of the answer of work-life balance.
So your proposition is that rather than work here and life here, that we create some sort of Venn diagram and they come together to a holistic answer?
Well, they'd better, because you're spending 8 hours a day times 5 days a week, many people a lot more. It's a majority of your life in work. So if you're going to not count that as part of your life, you're cutting out a pretty large chunk.
So I agree that's an ideal state for a lot of people, and I'd even argue, I've reached that point in my life, you've reached that point in your life. That said, I've worked in the industry for 30 years, and there have been huge chunks in my career where I didn't love my job.
What?
Yeah. I liked it. It satisfied me in the tactics and the decisions of the day-to-day. I might even reach a flow state and look up and go, wow, it's 5 o'clock. But I wasn't energized by the day. I was tired.
So how did you manage that?
Well, I did have work here and life here. So at 5 or 6 o'clock, I'd walk away and unplug, and I have hobbies. I would go back and play music, or I would go on a hike and do photography. I had created this sort of whole other alter ego outside the workplace. And I think that's where that phrase, work-life balance, comes from, is because for the 40 hours I spent at work, I'd spend 40 hours on me stuff. Does that make sense, or am I wrong?
I think it makes sense. I certainly, on a personal level, what I've found over the years is that I actually need to detach with some frequency, and I find for me there has to be one detachment per year that's like 5 days plus 2 weekends, and then a few other small ones.
You're Camp David.
Camp David, that's right.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, part of what you're talking about, which is let me switch off. I think in the old days, the lines were cleaner. First of all, we weren't as globalized, so you could switch off at 5 or 6, whatever your hours, whatever your schedule was. But I also think in the old days, the lines were cleaner because you didn't have the device in your pocket that made it so easy to not switch off. So I think the concept of switching off is maybe its own topic and shouldn't be ignored when we talk about work-life balance.
Well, I also think there's another trend that's going on, and Daniel Pink talked about it in his books, which is this new designer economy, or the creative economy. We're not assembly line workers anymore, and hopefully we can bring something of ourselves to the work we do, and vice versa. And I think that's the transition that I made, is moving from this sort of tactical manager of resources to becoming someone who takes my interests in music and photography and travel in the global world and pulling it all into my work. And I think that's where my Venn diagram has come together, to the point now where when I leave work and I read something for enjoyment, it actually informs my work, and vice versa.
I think that's an ideal state, like you said. And the other thing too is we have to recognize there are a lot of people out there with varying levels of education, varying levels of opportunity, and it may be not realistic to say everyone's going to find a job that incorporates their love of art with their love of interpretive dance with what they do all day at work. And that's not a bad thing either. I think what you can strive for is some level of alignment, at least on a basic level. So if you're an outgoing person, can you find an opportunity to be outgoing in your work instead of being shut in a closet all day working by yourself, right? If you're somebody who cares a lot about learning, can you find a job that has some level of opportunity for learning, even if it isn't exactly your most favorite topic? Are there ways to bring some alignment in? Because I think if you set the expectation that everyone will get to that sort of meta level of all things in perfect alignment, you set people up for dissatisfaction. And furthermore, that idea also presupposes this notion that your personality was pre-baked during the 20 or 30 years you were working, when actually it all came from you. So you grew, and the better question maybe is, how do you and your job grow more together instead of growing more apart? Does that make sense?
You're making it sound like marriage.
I think it is a little like marriage.
Yeah, so how do you grow closer together rather than further apart? I think that's a great question from a coaching perspective to ask someone to think about. am I? Where is my life versus my work? Are they growing apart? Are they coming together? And what can I do strategically to bring them closer together?
And the subtitle of my book was "You May Not Need to Quit to Get the Job You Want," which was you may need to quit. And it's sort of like the relationship, which is it may also not be the right relationship for you. So either you work on making it better or you work on finding a new one. So I think the relationship analogy is pretty good. So maybe the question back to the audience is, how do you manage your relationship with your job so that you either grow together or not apart, or so that you find a better one?